Newport Beach, California. A $4 million villa overlooking the Pacific. Past midnight. Richard Calloway was found on the floor of his study. Deep wound to the head. Blood. Too much blood. His wife Sienna had just come home from dinner. She found him, called 911, wept. No forced entry, the safe untouched. The security cameras had suffered a technical malfunction that night. The scene looked perfect. But blood doesn't forget. It remembers. The weapon, the angle, the distance, and everyone who was there. Today we're talking about Bloodstain Pattern Analysis. If you're not subscribed, do it before we start. This is Silent Tab. When you step into a crime scene, the blood is trying to tell you something. Which direction did it come from? How far did it fall? How many times was the victim struck? Where was the attacker standing? Did the victim move or go down instantly? The answers are locked inside the blood itself. You just have to know how to read it. Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, BPA, is one of the standard protocols used by the FBI, state crime labs, and county medical examiner offices across the United States. It maps the biomechanics of an event by studying the shape, size, distribution, and directionality of bloodstains. Certified analysts spend years learning to reconstruct a sequence of events from nothing but what was left on the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Simple in theory, anything but in practice. A drop falling from height leaves a round stain. The edges break into smaller satellite droplets based on the angle of impact. Change the height, change the pattern. Change the surface, change it again. Blood spurting from a severed artery draws an arc across the wall, arterial spurt pattern. It pulses with the rhythm of a failing heart. Once, twice, then nothing. That arc tells you where the victim was standing, how they were positioned, whether they were moving when it happened. When a weapon contacts blood and is raised again, it casts droplets across the ceiling or wall. Cast-off pattern. Count the arcs. That's how many times the weapon came down. 3 arcs means 3 strikes, not 2, not 1. And if someone was standing in the room while all of this happened, the blood cannot reach that spot. Everything around it is saturated. But that one area stays clean, a ghost shape on the floor, the precise outline of a body that was present. That's called a void pattern. Absence is evidence, sometimes the most powerful evidence in the room. Richard Calloway was one of the most recognizable names in Orange County. A real estate empire built over 30 years. Charity galas, magazine covers, handshakes with mayors, dinners with senators. The Calloway name opened doors in Newport Beach. He was on his 3rd marriage. Sienna, 31 years old, a former model, now a social entrepreneur. The 23-year gap between them raised no eyebrows in these circles. But people noticed how quickly Sienna had settled in. The villa, the black card, the invitations to every event worth attending. Then the divorce filing came, 6 days before the murder. Richard had called his attorney. Sienna was claiming 40% of the empire. Richard had no intention of paying. The paperwork was drawn up. The process had begun. There was one more detail that briefly sent the investigation sideways. Richard's son from his first marriage, Tyler, was in Newport Beach that week. He and his father had been cold for years. He despised Sienna and had never hidden it. He also knew about the updated will. The bulk of the estate went to him, not Sienna. Two suspects, two separate motives. Detectives pulled Tyler's alibi first. It held. That night, Sienna had been at dinner. Restaurant reservation, credit card receipt, Uber record. She came home and found Richard, called 911, wept. The security cameras had recorded nothing. Technical malfunction. The medical examiner's report was unambiguous. 3 distinct impact sites on the skull. Blunt force trauma. No weapon recovered. No forced entry. Detectives worked through Richard's inner circle methodically. Jordan Fitch came up early, not as a suspect, but as someone worth speaking to. 34 years old, an independent investment advisor. He had been part of Richard's world for years. A known face at the villa, a presence at business meetings, someone Richard had brought into private conversations most people never got close to. The kind of trust that takes a long time to build. What Richard didn't know, for the past several months, Fitch had been sleeping with Sienna. Nobody knew, not until the phones were pulled. BPA specialist Linda Marsh arrived at the scene in the early hours of the morning. She stepped into the study, stopped, took in the room. The blood was concentrated around the desk, across the floor, along the left wall. At first read, the scene was coherent. Richard struck while seated, collapsed to the ground. But the left wall was wrong. The arterial spurt pattern was too high. If Richard had been sitting, that height was physically impossible. He was standing, or already falling, when the artery was struck. Marsh moved to the ceiling, counted the cast-off arcs. She expected 2. There were 3. 3 strikes. The scene had been arranged to suggest 2. Someone had delivered one more blow than they meant to leave a record of. Panic or rage? Impossible to know. The arc didn't care. There was something else. The staging itself revealed the stager. A genuine crime of opportunity. A robbery gone wrong. A sudden confrontation leaves chaos. Splatter in unexpected directions. Transfer patterns from movement and struggle. The body positioned where it fell, not where it was convenient. This room was too clean in the wrong places, too deliberate. Whoever arranged it knew roughly what a crime scene looked like. But knowing what a crime scene looks like from the outside is not the same as understanding blood mechanics from the inside. They had cleaned, they had repositioned, they had accounted for what they could see. They hadn't accounted for what they couldn't. Then she moved to the corner behind the sofa. The floor was clean. Surrounded by heavy saturation on every side, that one area had been shielded. A rectangular space, exactly large enough for a person to crouch inside, forearms braced against their knees. Void pattern. Someone had been crouched in that corner while the blood was in the air, waiting. Then gone. Fitch's shoes were collected. Left sole, a small transfer stain. DNA matched Richard Calloway. The dimensions of the void mapped precisely to Fitch's body. The cast-off trajectory confirmed all 3 strikes had been delivered with the left hand. Jordan Fitch was left-handed. 1 in 10 people are. On the carpet behind the sofa, a second biological trace. Fitch's own DNA, the kind of microscopic transfer the body leaves without choosing to. Shed skin cells, a hair follicle, contact residue from fabric. Invisible, unavoidable, permanent. Then came the detail no one had anticipated. On Sienna's phone, an application with direct access to the villa's security system. The malfunction was not a malfunction. Sienna had switched the cameras off herself that night. The footage didn't exist because she had deleted it before calling 911. The alibi collapsed. Sienna, Jordan. A 6-day-old divorce filing, a $4 million villa, and the two people Richard Calloway had trusted most, one across the table in every business meeting, one beside him every night. Jordan Fitch was convicted of first-degree murder. Sienna Calloway, conspiracy and murder in the first degree. Both sentenced to life without parole. They had planned everything. Cameras went dark. Alibis were built. The scene was dressed to look like chance, but they hadn't accounted for the blood. The void pattern surfaced a ghost. The left hand made him identifiable, 1 in 10, read by a specialist who had spent a career learning what silence looks like. There is no such thing as a perfect murder. Every strike leaves a mark. Every position leaves a gap. If this hit, leave a like. Drop a comment. Which forensic technique do you want to see next? This was Silent Tab. Until next time, stay awake.